Hello, my amazing listeners. Welcome to today's journey into a world of forbidden love, family loyalty, and the courage it takes to break free from generations of shadows. Today, we dive into The Love Beyond Shadows, a story about two souls who dared to choose love over everything they'd been told to hold dear. So, settle in as we begin a tale where love defies fate itself. Lerato's heart pounded as she ran, clutching her belly as if to shield her unborn child from the dark legacy that had marked her life. She couldn't let them take her last hope, her love, her future away from her. Not again. A faint breeze stirred the night air as Lerato ran, her bare feet pounding the dry South African soil. Branches scraped her arms as she dashed through the undergrowth, her breaths coming out in sharp, shallow gasps. The silence of the night only amplified her heartbeat, and the footsteps behind her seemed louder and closer. She didn't dare look back. She was running for her life, for her future, for the child she carried within her. This wasn't how her life was supposed to be. Only months ago, Lerato had been an ordinary young woman, full of dreams, laughter, and hope. A chance encounter with a stranger on a plane had set her on a path that led here, haunted by secrets she barely understood. Lerato boarded the flight from Cape Town to Johannesburg with her hands trembling slightly. Her friend Sandy had begged her to come visit, insisting that Lerato needed a break. "You've been working non-stop, Lerato. Come for just a weekend," Thandi had said, her laughter warm and persuasive over the phone. But flying was Lerato's greatest fear, and sitting by the window only made it worse. She clenched her fists, trying to keep her breathing steady. The flight attendant, noticing her discomfort, kindly offered to move her. Gratefully, Lerato agreed. Her new seat was beside a quiet man with dark, intense eyes. He looked deep in thought, but there was something about him that seemed gentle, almost kind. His name was Thabo, though she didn't know it yet. When turbulence shook the plane, Lerato's grip tightened around his arm, her nails digging into his skin. She didn't realize until later when she noticed the crescent-shaped marks on his arm. Embarrassed, she murmured an apology and fumbled in her bag for a small bandage, which she applied with gentle fingers. He accepted her apology with a small nod, and though they exchanged no words, she felt a strange connection linger between them. After landing, Thabo watched Lerato disappear into the crowd, feeling an unfamiliar ache in his chest. In his world, attachments were a dangerous luxury he could never afford. Yet he couldn't forget the warmth of her touch, the kindness in her eyes. In Johannesburg, Thabo reunited with his older brother Kabelo. They were hiding out in a modest house on the city's outskirts, constantly on the move to evade enemies. The feud between their family and the Mokoena family had lasted for generations, a cycle of betrayal and revenge. "We can't stay here forever, Kabelo," Thabo said one evening, frustration heavy in his voice. Kabelo's face hardened, his gaze distant. "You think I don't know that, Thabo? They'll find us eventually. We're running out of places to go." Their father had died years ago in a clash with the Mokoenas, leaving Thabo and Kabelo to carry on the family's legacy. But unlike Kabelo, Thabo longed for freedom. He was tired of living in shadows, haunted by a past that wasn't even his. The feud had shaped his life, defined his choices, and it had taken his mother from him too. As he looked out at the night, his mind drifted back to Lerato, her smile, and the way her eyes held a quiet strength. He wondered, just for a moment, what life would be like if he could escape, leave the feud behind, and find peace in someone else's arms. Meanwhile, Lerato arrived at Thandi's apartment, feeling lighter than she had in months. Thandi was as vibrant as ever, her laughter infectious, her voice filling the small apartment with a melody. For the first few days, Lerato enjoyed the time with her friend, exploring the city and forgetting her worries. But one afternoon, while running errands, she saw him again, Thabo. He stood outside a small bookstore, looking lost in thought. Her heart skipped a beat, and she approached him with a smile. "Fancy meeting you here," she said, her voice light. Thabo looked up, surprise flickering across his face, before a faint smile softened his expression. They struck up a conversation, each word flowing seamlessly into the next. They discovered a shared sorrow. Both had lost their mothers young, leaving them with wounds they rarely shared with others. That night, they watched the city lights from a hillside, sharing stories, dreams, and the quiet solace of understanding. For Thabo, Lerato was a ray of light piercing through the darkness that surrounded him. And for Lerato, Thabo was a mystery, a man burdened with secrets he couldn't reveal, but whose presence filled her heart with an inexplicable warmth. As their relationship blossomed, Thabo began to open up. He told her about his family's feud with the Mokonas, how their fathers, uncles, and grandfathers had been locked in a cycle of violence for decades. He spoke of his father, a man haunted by the same burdens, and his mother, who had been lost to the feud in her attempt to protect her family. "But why can't it just end?" Lerato asked one evening as they sat under the stars. "It's not that simple," Thabo replied, a bitterness in his eyes. "The Mokoenas believe in revenge. They think the only way to make peace is if I marry their daughter, Nomvula. They think that would unite our families." Lerato felt her heart sink. She understood now the impossible choice he faced: duty to his family or a chance at happiness with her. "And if you don't marry her, they'll come after everyone I care about," he whispered, his voice thick with regret. In his silence, Lerato felt the weight of a legacy she could barely comprehend. She wanted to tell him to stay, to fight for them, but she knew the cost. And yet, the thought of losing him, of a life without the quiet comfort of his presence, was almost unbearable. Despite the threats, Lerato and Thabo continued to see each other, their love growing with each stolen moment. But then, Lerato discovered she was pregnant. She confided in Thandi, who hugged her tightly, her face a mixture of joy and fear. Weeks passed, and as her belly grew, hiding her condition became impossible. Kabelo, ever loyal to his family, noticed. Yet, he found himself torn. Watching Lerato's love for Thabo, he began to question his own loyalty. He'd grown up steeped in the feud, yet here was love, raw and real, right before him. One afternoon, Kabelo found Lerato in her apartment. Lerato, he began, his voice hesitant. You need to leave. My uncle Jabu, he's planning to end this feud, no matter the cost. He knows you're pregnant. Lerato's heart raced. What does he plan to do? He won't let anything stand in the way of peace. Not even you or the baby. Cabelo's face softened, guilt flashing in his eyes. But I'll help you. Leave Johannesburg. Hide. With Cabelo's help, Lerato left Johannesburg, slipping away under the cover of darkness. She fled to a coastal village, far from the city's reach, where she hoped to build a new life. In this quiet village, Lerato found peace among the locals, especially with an elder named Mama Dineo, who took her in, teaching her about herbs and healing. As the months passed, Lerato adjusted to her new life. She took long walks along the beach, gathering shells and whispering stories to her unborn child. In those moments, she felt Tabo's presence, as if he were with her, watching over them. When the day came, Lerato went into labor at sunset. Mama Dineo helped her deliver her daughter, Kelebagila, under the soft glow of lantern light. She named her child with the trembling hands, Kelebogil, meaning, I am grateful. Lerato held her daughter close, feeling a fierce love and determination fill her heart. She would protect Kelebogil at all costs. Here, in this small village, she would build a life for her daughter, a life free from the shadows of the past. Back in Johannesburg, Tabo struggled to keep his promise to his family. He married Nomvula, honoring the truce between their families, yet his heart remained bound to Lerato. His life became a series of hollow rituals, each day blurring into the next. Nomvula tried to win his affection, but Thabo's thoughts were with Lerato and the child he had yet to meet. Even when Nomvula discovered the bracelet Lerato had given him, her fury only deepened the distance between them. Their arguments became frequent, each one leaving Thabo feeling trapped and empty. One evening, Nomvula confronted him. You don't love me, you never have, and you never will, she said, her voice trembling with anger. Thabo's silence was answer enough. At that moment, he realized he couldn't keep living this way. His loyalty had cost him his freedom, and he knew he couldn't deny his heart any longer. Cabello, too, was haunted by the feud. Watching Thabo's marriage crumble and seeing the impact on Lerato had made him question everything he'd ever believed. Memories of his own lost love resurfaced. He had once loved a woman he couldn't be with because of the feud, and the pain of that loss had hardened him. Late one night, Cabello confronted their uncle, Jabu. Why are we still doing this? He demanded. All this fighting, these lives lost, what's it for? Jabu looked at him with a steely gaze. It's about honor, Cabello. We have a duty to our ancestors. But at what cost? Cabello's voice softened. Thabo and Lerato, they deserve a chance. We're fighting battles that should have ended years ago. Jabu was silent, but Cabello could see the doubt flicker in his uncle's eyes. Years passed, and Lerato raised Kelebogil in peace. She told her daughter stories of courage and love, though she never fully explained her past. But one day, while visiting the city for supplies, Lerato saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Thabo. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the years between them dissolved. Thabo approached, his gaze filled with emotions he'd hidden for so long. Kelebogile, he whispered, looking at the child by Lerato's side. Lerato nodded, tears filling her eyes. They spent hours together, talking, laughing, and rediscovering the love they'd once shared. Thabo met his daughter, his heart swelling with a happiness he hadn't felt in years. Determined to be together, Thabo and Lerato devised a plan to escape. They knew their love could no longer survive in the shadows, bound by the expectations of others. But before they could leave, Thabo knew he had to confront Jabu one last time. Thabo found Jabu seated in the old family room where portraits of their ancestors hung on the walls, each one a reminder of the legacy he was expected to uphold. Jabu looked up, his face impassive. "So, you've come to tell me you're ready to honor your family's name." Jabu's voice was stern, as if he already knew the answer. "No, uncle," Thabo replied, his voice steady. "I've honored this family my entire life. I've lost my mother to this feud, I've lost my freedom, and now I've even lost my love. But I won't lose any more." Jabu's eyes narrowed. "Your loyalty is to this family. If you turn your back now, you turn your back on everything our ancestors fought for." Thabo took a breath, his heart pounding. "Loyalty shouldn't mean losing yourself. I've given enough to this feud. I've sacrificed my happiness, and I won't sacrifice my daughter's future. My loyalty lies with Lerato and Kelebogile now. That is the family I want to protect." Jabu looked away, his jaw tight, his silence stretching between them. Thabo sensed his uncle's struggle, a battle between pride and an unspoken exhaustion. Finally, Jabu's shoulders slumped slightly, and he nodded, a reluctant acceptance in his gaze. "Go," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "Go and live the life you want. But remember, there will always be a price for peace." With those words, Thabo turned, leaving the family legacy behind for the chance to build a future of his own choosing. He didn't look back. Years later, Kelebogile stood before a mirror, smoothing the folds of her wedding dress. Her heart fluttered with excitement as she thought of the life she was about to begin. A life full of love, free from the burdens her parents had carried. Before leaving her room, she opened an old box her mother had given her that morning. Inside lay a simple bracelet, worn and frayed from years of use. Kelebogile held it delicately, understanding the significance of this small token that had been with her mother and father since the beginning. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "This bracelet, Kelebogile, is a reminder of everything we overcame, everything we fought for." In that moment, Kelebogile felt the strength of her parents' love and the courage they'd passed down to her. She remembered the many stories her mother had told her, tales of love and resilience, each one weaving a legacy of hope and bravery. As she walked down the aisle, Kelebogile caught sight of her parents, their faces radiant with pride and joy. She felt a rush of gratitude for the sacrifices they had made, for the love that had carried them through shadows, and for the life they had built together against all odds. Later that evening, as the sun set and the stars began to fill the sky, Lerato and Thabo held each other close, watching their daughter dance with her new husband. In each other's arms, they found peace, knowing they had broken free from the cycle of vengeance and that their love, against all odds, had built a legacy of resilience, freedom, and hope. The shadows that once loomed over them had lifted, and beneath the starlit sky, they danced. And there you have it, my wonderful listeners, the journey of the love beyond shadows. A story where love rose above the weight of legacy, and two hearts found the strength to build a future free from the chains of the past. In the end, Lerato and Thabo's story reminds us that love isn't just about what we're given, but about what we're willing to fight for, to protect, and to overcome. They faced the darkness together, and because of their courage, a new light now shines, a legacy of hope and resilience that lives on through their daughter. Thank you for joining me in this unforgettable tale of forbidden love, family, and freedom. If you felt inspired by Lerato and Thabo's journey, please share this story with others who need a reminder that love can truly conquer all. Until next time, stay courageous, stay hopeful, and remember, some love is worth every shadow we face.